Let's get a reaction to the Palestinians' request for full UN membership. Joining us from Chicago is Fawaz Gerges, director of the Middle East Center at the London School of Economics. He's the author of The Rise and Fall of Al-Qaeda. And here in New York, Mark Regev, spokesman for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
Mark, I'm going to begin with you. Mahmoud Abbas is saying, 2 decades of trying to negotiate for peace has turned out to be fruitless. It's time for a different approach. In your government's mind, what is wrong with that way of thinking?
We think that 2 decades haven't produced peace, and that's a pity, and it's something that we regret. But the reason has to be asked, why have we not achieved peace? You've had successive Israeli governments who've put very far-reaching proposals on the table. Just 3 years ago, Prime Minister Olmert talked about 67 borders plus swaps, even splitting Jerusalem, which is far beyond what I think most Israelis are willing to give. And yet the Palestinians still said no.
Mark, you have said that there's a gap among the Palestinians between reality, expectations, and reality. What should they expect?
I think the best way to move forward is to restart negotiations immediately. Yesterday, my Prime Minister was in the UN building in New York. So was the Palestinian leader. Mr. Netanyahu said, let's meet, let's talk, let's start the peace process. The Palestinians, unfortunately, still refuse to talk. And I would ask them, how do they expect to make peace and get a state if they boycott Israel, if they refuse to talk to Israel?
Fawaz, let me bring you into this discussion. Do you think strategically this was the right time for President Abbas to go to the UN with this?
Absolutely. I think this is a very significant historical moment for the Palestinians. It's a historical moment in terms of a moment of self-determination. They want the international community to recognize their identity, their statehood. Equally important, Russ, it's a declaration of independence from American diplomacy. American diplomacy in the eyes of the Palestinians that has failed to help them achieve a state of their own in the last 20 years. What the Palestinians are trying to do, we have tried everything. We have put our eggs in the American basket, and America has failed to convince Israel to accept what we call a legitimate settlement based on international legitimacy, the 1967 borders, and stop building Jewish settlements on Palestinian lands. Russ, few Americans know that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu has repeatedly rejected President Obama's humble request to partially free settlements on the West Bank and in occupied East Jerusalem.
Fawaz,
the Palestinians say
they
have no choice but to go to the international community.
Let me bring Mark in to respond to that. What's your response, Mark?
Israel has really extended its hand in peace with our neighbors. And the fundamental reason for the current impasse in the peace talk is that one side refuses to come to the table. That is the Palestinian side. We are ready to discuss all those very difficult issues that your correspondent just talked about. We're ready to discuss settlements and borders and Jerusalem and security, all those issues.
Very quickly for both of you, Fawaz, given the history here, how optimistic are you that this time, if there are peace talks again, that they'll be successful?
It is really, I'm very optimistic, because finally the Palestinians now are relying on international diplomacy, international law. I think you'll see in the next few weeks that the international community will recognize the independence of the Palestinian state. Only Israel and the United States in one camp against the international community. And this is a testament to the failure of American diplomacy. It's a testament that the Israeli leadership is really its own worst enemy. It's burying its head in the sand.
Mark, very
but
quickly.
They say one thing, they want peace. They do not want to basically give up the land, the rightful, the legitimate lands to the Palestinian people.
Okay, Fawaz and Mark, very quickly, optimistic?
I hope the Palestinians now understand that they don't have the numbers on the Security Council. It's not about an American veto. It appears they don't have the numbers. I hope they step back. I hope they leave this unilateralist track and they return to talks. Only by talking can we make a better future for our peoples.
Okay, I'm going to leave it right there. Mark Regev here in New York and Fawaz Gerges in Chicago. We thank you both for joining us. Really appreciate it.